Super Mario 64's movement fucking sucks. It's sluggish, unresponsive, you have zero maneuverability midair, and falling to your death because you long jumped into an invisible wall is a thing that can just happen for some reason. It's still a great game, don't get me wrong, but it is ultimately a product of its time, and the controls feel extremely dated, and if you ever decide to pick it up and play it today, you will likely come to the same conclusion that Super Mario 64 is the worst controlling game in the entire Mario series. Until it isn't. You see, there's a funny thing that happens if you play this game for long enough, where something just clicks. It's like a switch flips in your brain, and suddenly you realize that this old-ass game with its dogshit camera and its dated, clunky controls is actually one of the most satisfying to control games you'll ever play in your life. Like, when it comes to the metric of like how enjoyable it is to just move your character through the world, in the 30 years since this game has come out, I genuinely don't think any other platformer has surpassed it. Not even newer Mario games. There's a reason Super Mario 64 is the most speedrun game of all time. And Mario 64 is not the only case where objectively stiffer and less responsive controls actually increases the fun factor of a game rather than detracting from it. Now, if you read the title of this video and you think that the whole premise, the whole point I'm trying to make here is stupid and ridiculous, I'm going to immediately counter that. I'm going to immediately prove you wrong. Because there is an entire genre of games in which the entire game is literally built around the controls being intentionally awkward and strange. Games like Octodad, Surgeon Simulator, Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy.
I'm about to take my pants off.
Games like I Am Bread, Quap. Remember Quap? Who remembers Quap? Where are my Quap heads in the chat? If you took any of these games and you replaced them with a control system that gave the player the most control, the least chance of messing up, like the most default fucking left stick moves, A button jumps, X button interacts, like that sort of shit, you don't have the game anymore. It's gone. There's no fun left to be had. But this concept does not only apply to these gimmick games, it applies to pretty much any platformer, any action game, any video game with combat or traversal-based challenge is affected by this concept. And you need to be careful not to give the player too much control, or you might actually severely impact how fun your game is to play in a very negative way. Or in some cases, more subtle ways. Mirror's Edge has got to be one of my top 5 games of all time. And though its sequel, prequel, reboot thing is still a fun game, I haven't played it anywhere near as much as the first game. There are multiple reasons for this, one of them being that for some reason, every single character in this game is competing to see who can be the most unlikable cunt in the room. Especially fucking Plastic. Oh my god, it's like they took Sheldon Cooper and they made him 5 times worse somehow. It's awful. It's genuinely, repugnant.
So, Plastic, what have you been up to lately?
Why do you ask?
No reason, just making conversation.
I would prefer if you didn't.
Okay, sorry. I have one on him if you make it. And you better make it, or I'll...
Or what? She's quite far from you inside a completely different building.
Plastic, whatever. I can't imagine Gabriel Kruger being happy to find Amistad agent smack in the middle of his little kingdom.
What do you mean, kingdom? He's not a king.
No, I mean, never mind.
Foreign.
Yeah, I found it.
Not a question. I bet they want it back.
Yeah, well,
Not a question. When do you need...
Anyway, going back to the controls, which is what we're actually talking about in this video. Or I guess maybe it's better for me to say movement. I mean, are we gonna be all pedantic about that in the comments? Are we gonna be like, oh, you shouldn't say controls, you should say movement, because that's what you fucking move the character with the control. I prefer Mirror's 1's. There's a few moments in Mirror's Edge 1 that feel kind of stiff and rigid compared to the second game. Things like vaulting, grabbing a pipe, doing a rolling landing. There's like a split second where you can't control the character because the game is playing in animation. In Mirror's Edge 2, you still retain directional control when rolling and when vaulting, though the camera doesn't really do anything at all to indicate that you just vaulted, and the pipe grab animation is way shorter. All of these things make the game feel smoother than the first game, but at the same time I feel like those actions have less impact, less feedback that you just did a thing. Also, this might seem really nitpicky, but in the first game, when you burst through a door, you like run into the door and Faith bursts through it and then comes to a stop. In the second game, she runs up to the door, stops still in front of the door, and then bursts through it. I don't know why they did that. It makes a lot more sense for the momentum to carry into the door animation and then stop, rather than stop dead in her tracks before opening the door, and nobody cares about this. Nobody cares. I'm the only person who's ever complained about this, but I'm still fucking right, goddammit. Even though the first game is technically stiffer and like less responsive at certain parts, like there's a few moments of where the movement just like locks you out of being able to affect it at all for a split second, it felt weightier. And I think the idea of weight is very important to having satisfying movement in games. And I think this is why Mario 64 is still so fun after all these years. It is the weightiest of all the Mario games, in my personal opinion. Why'd I say it like that? I'm a fucking freak. Mario 64 really makes you feel like a fat Italian man. Also, I just want to add, I think playing Mario 64 on its original hardware with the original controller is the worst possible way to experience the game. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the N64, I grew up with it, it will always hold a very special place in my heart, and the controller, whilst visually is iconic, mechanically it is one of the most uncomfortable controllers to use for an extended period of time, and that is 100% the fault of the analog stick. Nostalgia is a powerful drug, but it's not powerful enough to make anyone think that this was good. It wasn't good, it was bad for the time. The title of this video is not Bad Controllers Make Better Games, because I might be retarded, but I'm not that retarded. The plastic in the stick wears down so quickly that once it wears down to a certain point, a lot of games are kind of unplayable. I remember I had to do this fucking dumb trick where so there's this trick that you could do where you could press L and R and start, and you could reset the position of the control stick. So what I would have to do in order to be able to like make certain jumps in certain games, I would have to hold the controller stick down, reset it to that point, and only then would it register me pushing forward enough to make the character move at full speed so I could make the jump. It was bad. It's a bad controller. I think Nintendo deserves to be known for, yes, being one of the best video game companies of all time, but also making one of the worst analog sticks, possibly the worst analog stick of all time. And I think they deserve tremendous shame upon their families because they fucking did it again with the Joy-Con! Oh, another thing that I realized after playing this game quite a lot on emulators and then later on like the 3D collection and shit, I didn't realize how fucking dog shit early PAL games were, because basically due to how TVs worked at the time in different regions, the American and Japanese N64s ran at 30 FPS while the European, Australian N64s ran at 25 FPS. Now, later games would have a little bit of math in them that was able to make the game play at the same speed even if the frame rate was lower. Early games, like Mario 64, didn't do that at all. So you're literally playing a game that is like 20% slower, and boy do you feel it. Like, I don't know if watching it really does it justice. Going back to this after playing it 30 FPS for so long now, it genuinely feels like I'm playing in slow motion underwater, like I'm trying to move the mustachioed man through a fucking vat of goo. It's awful. So yeah, if you combine that with the shit controller, yeah, it's not that fun to go back to. If you take literally the exact same game and the same exact movement and you give it a good controller and a good frame rate, it's fucking awesome. It's fucking great. Anyway, so several minute long tangent bashing the N64 aside, I want to quickly talk about a type of control set that's basically extinct in the modern age, which we all collectively agreed to call tank controls, which is basically where left and right rotates the character instead of moving them in that direction, and up and down move the character forward and back relative to the character's rotation. So in games like Resident Evil and Tomb Raider, a huge part of what made those encounters scary was the rigidity of the controls. Whether you want to run away or whether you want to turn and fight it, it's a struggle to do that. It makes you feel way more vulnerable. Same deal with the fixed camera angle. Like, there's nothing to stop you from making a game like this today. The AAA industry is never gonna fucking do it, but I mean, you could do it. Do it. Do it, pussy. It forces limitations on the player that makes it more challenging. And the more challenging something is, the more satisfying it is to succeed. The Souls games understand this concept very, very well. In Dark Souls, there's a proportional risk versus reward when it comes to the damage a strike does versus how long the strike takes to complete. Because while an attack animation is playing, you can't dodge. You have to wait until the attack is finished before you can dodge. Those games would be a lot less fun if the dodge button just worked whenever you pushed it. Bringing this all back to Mario 64, like, you actually have to commit to your jump. You can't just bitch out after you've pressed the button, you're just gonna fall. I also really like how in Mario 64, in order to do a wall jump, you have to get the timing just right. You can't just rub your face down the side of a wall, slide down it, and then jump off whenever it suits you. You have to press the button exactly when you hit the wall, or else it does not work. It demands more of the player, but it is also more rewarding and satisfying to pull it off. Now, I'm not saying making controls worse makes the experience better. It doesn't, and we can prove this very easily with Mario 64's sequel, Mario Sunshine. Because this game actually does control like fucking diarrhea. When you die in Mario 64, other than the aforementioned invisible fucking walls, it usually is, at the end of the day, your fault. That's not how Sunshine feels. Sunshine feels like it just fucking has its way with you. The entire game is plagued by the jankiness of Mario's movement in the world. The physics are just so spastic and unpredictable. It's a kind of surprisingly bad for a Nintendo game. They were usually not this janky.
Lies.
Yeah, I did it.
That's a Paula Abdul song.
Almost. Yeah!
He's like, no, I don't want to be fine. And you're dead.
You know, now that I think about it, this is not in the script, but I'm actually just kind of thinking about this now. Despite all that, I actually vastly prefer Mario Sunshine's movement to 3D Land and 3D World. I just find the way that Mario controls in these games to be dreadfully fucking boring. Sunshine still has some good aspects to it, like there is a quickness to it that is quite fun. Hold on, what are you saying? You're saying Mario Sunshine's fun because it's quick and Mario 64 is fun because it's slow? Make up your fucking mind, you stupid furry Yes, I am saying that, I suppose, in a way. Well, here's the thing though. Mario 64 is only slow if you move around like a fucking numpty. Once you actually learn how to play properly, you can actually build up some pretty good speed. The 3D World and Land games are slow, but they're also completely fucking weightless. It is my personal opinion that these games have a really, really poor sense of weight and momentum, and you can control yourself like too much in the air, which has actually caused me to die because of how weird and unnatural it feels. Except maybe when you get a speed boost pad, but that's like little sections of the game have that. Most of the game does not have that. You know what, I might have been a little harsh earlier when I described Mario Sunshine's controls as diarrhea. It is still fun, it's just jank as all hell, and it's not as weighty as Mario 64. I think I much prefer fun controls that are flawed over boring controls that are perfect. I suppose I may as well talk about the rest of the 3D Mario games a bit. My favourite Mario game overall is Galaxy, though I don't actually think it has the most interesting movement. I still think that goes to 64. I think given the complications that the gravity mechanic introduces, it makes sense to kind of simplify the movement a little bit. It's pretty easy to just kind of move around, but I still think it's way funner than the land in the 3D world. I don't know what people see in these games, to be honest. But yeah, with Super Mario 64, you can pull off some really, like, smooth, impressive, and super satisfying movement. Schmovement, if you will. Mario Sunshine and Mario Odyssey have their own versions of schmovement, which is still very fun, it's fun in a different way than Mario 64's is. So I first began to kind of dawn upon this realization a couple years ago whilst attempting to make a game of my own in Unity. Yes, I'm a Unity user. No, I'm not proud of it. And no, I'm not switching to Unreal or Godot. I've spent too much time learning how to use this infernal engine to jump ship now, okay? I'm just stuck with it. Also, don't worry, I'm aware they tried to pull some insanely greedy shit a couple years back, but thankfully bullying works and they backed the fuck off. And if they ever try and pull this shit again, we'll just have to bully them 10 times harder. Don't do it, Matthew. Don't do it, you're gonna get swirly. But anyway, so the game I was making was a N64 style 3D adventure platformer, which was heavily inspired by Rayman 2 and Ocarina of Time. It was my first ever game too, like I pretty much did this one Udemy course, start to finish, and then immediately started development on my dream game. And let's just say, there's a reason every game dev on YouTube tells you not to do that. After several years of work on it, I took a bit of a break to start work on another project, that's always a good sign. And during that break, I happened to play 3 other N64 PS1 style indie platformers, like almost back to back, that being Cavern of Dreams, Corn Kids 64, and Pseudo Regalia. All of which were really bloody good, and I had that much fun with them that I was inspired to work on my own platformer again, and that's when I had the horrifying realization, oh fuck, my game's not fun.
Why isn't this working? Is there something missing? Must more blood be shed?
No, but seriously, I was kind of at a loss for words. I didn't know what I'd done wrong. I know the controls aren't bad because I'm not getting frustrated with them in any way. The character controls really, really smoothly. The movement's really tight, and the camera is tied to the mouse, so it's that easy to use. I basically never miss a jump. In fact, my controls are actually kind of perfect. I made a jumping game where it's borderline impossible to miss a jump. Do you see the problem there? This was hugely demotivating because I felt like I'd done a really good job with my character controller. Like, it felt pretty damn close to Rayman 2. But that game is fun. I've played through it like 50 times, so what gives? What's the difference? Well, other than the fact that that game was made by a team of professionals instead of one Australian dingus with 0 game dev experience, there's a couple things at play here. One of the biggest ones, I think, is that the camera is too good to control. To the point where I didn't even have to use the ASD keys. I could just hold W and do the rest of the required directional movement with the mouse. That's how easy it was. And then every time I jump, I could just look down, like directly down at the camera to make sure I land it perfectly every time. And when you add on to that I also had Rayman 2's ledge grab feature, what I had essentially done was completely neutered the challenge of the platforming element of my 3D platformer. That's kind of a big fucking problem. Especially using a mouse, which is way faster and more precise than an analog stick, plus you never have to take your hand off of it. So what does this mean? Does this mean that we should just never give the player precise control of the camera in a 3D platformer? Well, yes and no. If you're basing the movement in your game off of one of these old games that didn't have precise camera control, you probably shouldn't give the player precise camera control. I think if you want to give the player that level of control of the camera, you need to keep that in mind from the beginning. Off the top of my head, 2 3D platformers I can think of where you can control the camera with the mouse like that is Psychonauts and A Hat in Time. 2 very fun games, which I like a lot. Why are they fun though? Well, I think the simplest way to put it is just that these games have a lot going for them, other than just whether or not the specific act of running and jumping around the world is fun or challenging. There are plenty of other mechanics at play, there's plenty of combat. With Psychonauts, there's a lot of other things that contribute to that game being good, like the dialogue, the atmosphere. The overall vibe is still very unique and captivating. Gameplay is important, but it's not everything. It's only one half of the picture. The other half is presentation! And if you don't think presentation is important, just imagine for a second Portal 1 and Portal 2. No GLaDOS, no Wheatley, no dialogue whatsoever at all, no story, just back-to-back-to-back-to-back-to-back puzzle gameplay and literally nothing else. And I could run through a million other examples, but I think you get the picture. To be honest, in my personal opinion, I think that really good presentation can actually carry mediocre or even bad gameplay. Hell, I think the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise has survived off of its character design and its soundtrack alone. But anyway, I'm getting a bit sidetracked. Let's return to the topic of movement for a moment. You can have games where the movement is incredibly tight, like where you turn on a dime and there's no, momentum, really. But there are some games where that type of movement is not appropriate. 343, Industries, you fucking
Hey everyone, I've got a good idea. Why don't we make it so when the player moves left and right, it changes instantly. There's no momentum, no acceleration, ease in and out at all. It's just fucking instantaneous. That'll be really fun to fight against, won't it? And on top of that, why don't we completely get rid of bullet magnetism because a bunch of retards online think that that's for noobs and don't fucking understand game design. And neither do we, apparently, because we listen to them. Welcome to 343 Studios, where we're all fucking stupid.
Okay, no, we're not doing that again. We're not doing another Halo Rant. We already did a Halo Rant. We're not doing another one. Yet. But yeah, there are some games where the movement is really, really, really tight and precise to your inputs. Generally speaking, these games usually have very, very highly challenging environments. So the more rapidly a character responds to your inputs, the more intense the environment or the enemies should be to make up for that. Otherwise, you've just deleted challenge without adding anything in to compensate. Also, don't underestimate the importance of satisfying feedback. The character animation and the sound design absolutely has a huge impact on how satisfying it feels to just do stuff with the character. Let us compare for a moment Rayman 1 and Mario 1. If we have a look at these two games side by side, notice how Rayman here responds and stops responding to the player's inputs instantaneously, whereas Mario has a shit ton of acceleration, deceleration, and just weight and momentum that Rayman does not have at all. One is not necessarily better than the other, but they are fun for different reasons. Like we all understand at this point, challenge is a huge part of what makes games fun, but the controls have a huge effect on that challenge and should not be forgotten. Don't make your game so easy to control that the player will basically never fail, and don't be afraid to force limitations on the player. Hell, you might just not even give them the option to move the camera freely at all. You might just have a little button that resets it behind them and that's it. Not to say that you can't give the player camera control, but if you do, understand you're making the game far less challenging, which means you will need to make up for that in other areas. I think it's easy to give fun this kind of ethereal status of a thing that just kind of happens once all of the elements are correctly in play and everything's kind of fine-tuned till they're all working together in harmony and creating an experience that is fun. But it's not a mythical thing. It is actually kind of almost measurable. Every video game derives its fun from different factors, so if you're making a video game, you should be conscious and aware of what factors, what about your game actually makes it fun. And you shouldn't be afraid to do some things that people might consider dated, because you're just locking yourself out of a whole era of game design that we all remember fondly for a fucking reason. Don't make the assumption that giving the player maximum control over the camera and over themselves is a good thing. You can make the movement difficult. You can give the player room to grow, room to get better, instead of just immediately mastering the movement and being as good as they're ever going to be within the first 10 seconds. I find it quite funny that Mario 64 was one of the first 3D platformers ever made, and to this day, it might still be the best one.